On my 18th birthday, my mom asked, "Are you ready to meet your real dad now?" I dropped my birthday fork and stared at the chocolate cake while Mom's words echoed in our kitchen. "What do you mean, my real dad?" My voice came out strangled because Dad had died in a car accident when I was 12. Mom pushed a manila folder across the table with shaking hands. "Richard wasn't your biological father, honey. I've been protecting you from the truth for 18 years, but now he's getting out and you need to know." Inside the folder were newspaper clippings from 2006 about a college student named Rebecca Walsh who'd been assaulted on campus. Rebecca Walsh was my mother's maiden name before she became Rebecca Coleman. The next document was a birth certificate with the father's name blacked out in thick marker. Under it was a court document showing that Christopher Rankin had been sentenced to 18 years for sexual assault. His mugshot stared back at me, and I saw my own features reflected in his face. Same narrow nose, same high cheekbones, even the same slight dimple on the left side. "No," I whispered, but Mom was already pulling out more papers. "He gets released today at noon. His lawyer contacted me last week. He wants to meet you." "You told me Dad died in a car crash," I said, my mind struggling to reorganize 18 years of memories. Mom's tears were flowing freely now. "Richard did die in a car crash. He was your dad in every way that mattered. He married me when you were 2, knowing everything. He loved you completely." She showed me photos I'd never seen before of Richard holding me as a toddler, teaching me to ride a bike, cheering at my little league games. "But Christopher is your biological father, and he's been writing letters from prison for 15 years. She retrieved a box from her bedroom closet that I'd always assumed held old tax documents. Inside were hundreds of letters, all addressed to my daughter, in neat handwriting. The most recent one was dated just 2 weeks ago. "Dear daughter, I'll be free on your 18th birthday. What a gift from God. Your mother has poisoned you against me, but I pray you'll give me a chance to explain my truth. I've found redemption through Christ. I want to be the father you deserve." The words made me physically sick. "How did he know when my birthday was?" I asked, my hands trembling as I set down the letter. Mom pulled up a website on her phone showing my high school's honor roll from last year. There I was, listed with my full name and birth date for the Academic Achievement Award. "He's been tracking you online from prison computers, school websites, local newspaper mentions when you won the science fair, your track team results. Everything public he's found." She scrolled through printed screenshots he'd apparently sent to his lawyer as evidence of his paternal interest. The doorbell rang at exactly noon, like he'd been waiting outside counting down the seconds. Through the peephole, I saw a thin man in an ill-fitting suit holding a bouquet of pink roses. Christopher Rankin looked older than his mugshot, gray-haired and gaunt, but his eyes were intense as he stared at our door. "I know you're in there, Rebecca," he called out. "I just want to give my daughter her birthday present. 18 roses for 18 years I missed." Mom grabbed my arm and pulled me away from the door. "We're calling the police," she said, but Christopher heard her. "Go ahead. I'm not violating any law. I served my time. I'm a free man on a public sidewalk." He was right, and we both knew it. There was no restraining order because Mom's lawyer had said we didn't have grounds until he actually did something threatening. "Please, I can hear you breathing, sweetheart. I'm your father. Don't I deserve 5 minutes after 18 years? His voice was calm, reasonable, nothing like what I'd expected from a convicted rapist. I opened the door before Mom could stop me, but I kept the chain on. "I don't want your flowers," I said through the gap. His face lit up when he saw me, and his expression of joy made me want to slam the door. "You look just like my mother," he said softly. "Same beautiful eyes. I knew you'd be gorgeous." The way he said gorgeous made my skin crawl. Mom appeared beside me and addressed him coldly. "You need to leave, Christopher. Now. I have every legal right to be here," he said, pulling out a folder of his own. "My lawyer says parental rights weren't terminated. I want a relationship with my daughter." He tried to push the roses through the gap in the door. "Her name is Anna, by the way," Mom said, "though I'm sure you already knew that from your stalking." He smiled at hearing my name from her lips. "Anna. Beautiful. I would have named you Christina after me." I slammed the door and locked both deadbolts. Through the window, we watched him place the roses on our doorstep and walk to a beat-up sedan parked across the street. He didn't drive away, just sat there watching our house. Mom was already on the phone with her lawyer, Patricia Coleman, who said she'd file for an emergency protective order, but it would take at least 48 hours to process. Meanwhile, Christopher had every right to sit on a public street. "Pack a bag," Mom said. "We're going to Aunt Catherine's." But when we tried to leave through the garage, Christopher followed us. He stayed exactly 3 cars behind, never getting close enough to be considered threatening, but never losing sight of us either. Mom drove to the police station instead, and Christopher parked across the street from there too. The desk sergeant said unless he made a threat or tried to make physical contact, they couldn't do anything. "He's smart," Officer Daniels explained. "Knows exactly where the legal lines are. Probably had 18 years to research this." She recommended we stay with friends and vary our routines until the protective order went through. But she also warned us that Christopher had rights as a biological parent that hadn't been legally terminated. "You're 18 now, so custody isn't an issue, but he can claim emotional damages for being denied a relationship with you." We stayed at Aunt Catherine's that night, but Christopher found us by morning. He was parked outside her subdivision's gate when we woke up, just sitting there with a coffee and a newspaper like any normal person. Catherine's husband Paul wanted to confront him, but Mom stopped him. That's what he wants. Any confrontation he can spin as us being aggressive. Instead, we documented everything, taking photos of him following us, keeping a log of every appearance. Patricia filed the emergency order on Monday, but the judge wanted a hearing first. Without a direct threat or attempted physical contact, it's hard to justify restricting a biological parent's access, she explained. The hearing was set for Thursday. Christopher would be there, would get to present his side. He'll claim he just wants to know his daughter, that he's reformed, found God, all the usual lines, Patricia warned. Be prepared for him to seem very sympathetic. On Wednesday, I went to school because I had finals I couldn't miss. Christopher was there standing across the street from campus with a sign that said, "I love you, Anna. Dash Dad." Students were taking photos, whispering, and someone posted it on Instagram within minutes. By lunch, everyone knew my dad was the creepy guy with the sign, except they didn't know he wasn't really my dad, that he was the man who'd raped my mother when she was 19. Jessica, my best friend since middle school, found me crying in the bathroom. I told her everything, the whole truth spilling out between sobs. She held me while I shook, then marched straight to the principal's office. Within an hour, the school resource officer was escorting Christopher away for trespassing near school property. But the damage was done. Everyone had seen him, taken pictures, created their own narrative about the estranged father trying to reconnect. That night, Mom finally let me read all his letters. They started when I was 3, full of religious language about forgiveness and God's plan. By the time I was 10, they'd evolved into detailed fantasies about what we'd do together when he got out. Fishing trips, teaching me to drive, walking me down the aisle at my wedding. He'd created an entire imaginary relationship with a daughter he'd never met, couldn't legally contact, and who only existed because he'd violently assaulted her mother. "Why did you keep me?" I asked Mom as we sat in Aunt Catherine's guest room. It was the question I'd been afraid to ask. She pulled me close and stroked my hair like when I was little. "Because you were mine. Not his. Mine. The moment I felt you move inside me, you became my reason to survive what he did." Richard understood that. He said you were proof that good could come from evil, that love could defeat hate. The hearing arrived with Christopher dressed in a suit that actually fit this time, looking every bit the reformed sinner with his Bible and humble demeanor. He testified about finding God in prison, about completing therapy programs, about his deep desire to know his only child before it was too late. His lawyer presented certificates from anger management, substance abuse counseling, and victim empathy training. They painted him as a changed man denied his fundamental right to fatherhood. Then Patricia cross-examined him. "Mr. Rankin, do you believe you raped Rebecca Walsh?" Christopher's calm mask slipped for just a second. "I was convicted of a crime I've served my time for." Patricia pressed harder. "That's not what I asked. Do you believe you raped her?" He gripped his Bible tighter. "I believe there was a misunderstanding that night. I was young and drunk. She was too. Things got out of hand. Mom grabbed my hand so tight it hurt." "So you don't believe you raped her?" Patricia continued. Christopher looked directly at Mom for the first time. "I believe Rebecca regretted what happened and made a choice that destroyed my life." The judge shifted in his seat, and I saw his expression change. Patricia pulled out a transcript from the original trial. "You testified then that she wanted it, that she was asking for it. Do you still believe that?" Christopher's lawyer objected, but the judge overruled him. "I believe," Christopher said slowly, "that I've paid for whatever happened that night." Patricia smiled coldly. "So after 18 years, you still won't admit you raped her. You still believe she wanted it. And now you want access to the child that resulted from what you still refuse to acknowledge as rape." The courtroom was dead silent. Christopher's lawyer tried to redirect, talking about rehabilitation and second chances, but the damage was done. I testified next, my voice shaking as I described the stalking, the way he'd researched my entire life from prison, how he'd created a fantasy relationship with someone he'd never met. I showed the judge printouts from Christopher's Facebook, which he'd created from prison through a contraband phone. He'd commented on hundreds of photos of me that friends had posted, always signing them, "Love Dad," even on pictures from when I was 5 years old. The judge granted the protective order, but with modifications. Christopher could write letters to a P.O. box if he wanted, which I never had to read. He could attend public events where I might be present, like graduation, but had to maintain 500 feet distance. It felt like both a victory and a defeat. Mom hugged me outside the courthouse while Christopher watched from exactly 500 feet away, measuring the distance with an app on his phone. The letters started arriving at the P.O. box immediately. Patricia collected them as evidence, but I read a few. They were worse now, angry and accusatory. He called Mom a liar and me brainwashed. He said I'd regret rejecting him, that blood was blood, that I couldn't escape my DNA. One letter included a photo of him at my age, and the resemblance was undeniable. "You're half me," he wrote. "No judge can change that." Graduation day came with Christopher stationed precisely 500 feet from the stadium entrance. He held a sign congratulating his beloved daughter and had hired a photographer to take pictures of me walking across the stage with a telephoto lens. Other parents thought it was sad, a father forced to watch from afar. They didn't know he was documenting everything for some future legal challenge, building evidence that he was a devoted father denied his rights. 2 weeks later, Christopher sued us. He wanted compensation for 18 years of parental alienation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. He claimed Mom had hidden me from him, denied him his constitutional rights as a father, and damaged his mental health. The lawsuit demanded $500,000 we didn't have, and joint custody retroactively acknowledged, meaning he wanted legal recognition as my father on all documents. Patricia laughed when she read it. "He has no case, but he can make your lives hell for years fighting it." She countersued for harassment, stalking, and violating the protective order's spirit if not its letter. She also filed to have his parental rights officially terminated based on the rape conviction and his continued denial of the crime. "We need to go on offense," she said. "Make him defend rather than attack." The legal bills started piling up. Mom took a second mortgage on the house Richard had left us. I got a job at Target to help with expenses, and Christopher showed up on my first day, maintaining his legal distance but making sure I saw him. He came every shift, buying single items to justify his presence, always checking out at a different register while staring at me. Management couldn't ban him without cause, and he never did anything explicitly threatening. College started in August, and I thought moving 2 hours away would give me some peace. But Christopher followed. He rented an apartment in the same town, got a job at a construction site near campus, and joined the same gym where I had a membership. Always legal, always exactly 500 feet away, but omnipresent. I changed gyms. He joined the new one. I studied at different coffee shops. He found them all. My roommate Rachel thought I was paranoid until she saw him herself. He was sitting in our dorm's visitor lot, technically public property, just watching our window. "That's seriously creepy," she said, and helped me hang blackout curtains. But I could feel him out there, knew he was documenting my every movement. He posted on Facebook about being a loving father forced to love from afar, and strangers commented with sympathy and outrage on his behalf. October brought a new development. Christopher had been contacted by a father's rights group that specialized in parental alienation cases. They took him on pro bono, seeing a perfect test case for their agenda. Suddenly he had real lawyers, not the strip mall attorney he'd started with. They filed motions challenging the protective order, demanding paternity tests to officially establish his rights, and subpoenaing my medical and school records. Mom hired a second lawyer to handle the avalanche of paperwork. We were hemorrhaging money we didn't have, which was probably part of Christopher's strategy. Patricia warned us he might be trying to force a settlement, hoping we'd give him some form of access just to make it stop. "Don't give in," she advised. "That's what predators do. They exhaust you into compliance." I started seeing a therapist at the campus counseling center. Dr. Melanie Harrison specialized in trauma from sexual assault, and she'd seen cases like mine before. "Children of rape live with a unique burden," she explained. "You're proof of the worst thing that ever happened to your mother, but also her greatest love. That's complex trauma." She helped me understand that Christopher's obsession wasn't love, but possession, control, the same impulse that had driven him to rape Mom. November brought the first real victory. Patricia had found 3 other women Christopher had been accused of assaulting in college. 2 were willing to testify about their experiences, though the statute of limitations had passed. 1, Nicole, had kept evidence all these years, including photos of bruises and a recording of Christopher admitting he got rough, but claiming she'd wanted it that way. The father's rights group quietly withdrew their support. But Christopher didn't give up. He represented himself now, filing handwritten motions that were legally nonsensical but emotionally exhausting. He demanded a paternity test, which we didn't contest since biology wasn't in dispute. When it confirmed he was my biological father, he acted like he'd won something. "Science doesn't lie," he posted on Facebook. "I am her father, no matter what they say." The next escalation came in January. I was walking to class when Christopher appeared directly in front of me, well within the 500-foot limit. Before I could react, he grabbed my arm. "Please, just listen for 1 minute," he begged. "I'm your father. I love you. I've loved you since before you were born." I screamed, and several students intervened. Campus security arrived within minutes, and Christopher was arrested for violating the protective order and assault. At his arraignment, Christopher claimed he'd miscalculated the distance, that grabbing me was just a father's instinct to connect with his child. The judge wasn't buying it. She revoked his bail and ordered a psychological evaluation. The evaluation revealed what we already knew. Christopher showed signs of narcissistic personality disorder and an inability to acknowledge his crimes. He genuinely believed he was the victim in all of this. While Christopher sat in jail awaiting trial, we finally had some peace. I could walk to class without scanning for him, sleep without wondering if he was in the parking lot. Mom stopped jumping at every doorbell. We started to remember what normal felt like, but we also knew it was temporary. His sentence for violating the order would be minimal, maybe a few months. Then he'd be back. Patricia used this time to build our case for terminating his parental rights permanently. She gathered testimony from the other women, documented his stalking, compiled his letters showing his unstable mindset. She also found something unexpected in his prison records. 3 different cellmates had requested transfers because Christopher talked obsessively about his daughter and what he'd do when he got out. One had reported Christopher had a wall of pictures of me that he'd printed from social media. The termination hearing was scheduled for March. Christopher appeared via video link from jail, representing himself again. He'd written a 20-page statement about his rights as a father, quoting the Bible and Constitution in equal measure. But when the judge asked him directly if he accepted responsibility for raping my mother, he launched into a rant about false accusations and women's lies. Even on the grainy video feed, you could see the judge's disgust. Mom testified about the night of the assault in detail I'd never heard before. How Christopher had followed her from a party, forced his way into her dorm room, held her down while she begged him to stop. How she'd fought back, leaving scratches on his face that prosecutors had used as evidence. How she'd wanted to die afterward but chose to live for me. I sobbed through her entire testimony while Christopher rolled his eyes on the screen. Nicole testified next about her assault 2 years before Mom's. The pattern was identical. Followed from a party, forced entry, violence when she resisted. She'd been too scared to report it then, but she wanted to speak now. "He's dangerous," she said simply. "No child should be forced to have him in their life." Christopher tried to object, but the judge muted his microphone. The judge's decision was swift and comprehensive. Christopher's parental rights were terminated completely. He was banned from any contact with me, direct or indirect, for life. Any violation would result in immediate imprisonment. The judge called him a continued threat to the safety and well-being of both mother and child, and said his complete lack of remorse made him irredeemable. Christopher screamed obscenities until they cut his video feed. He was released from jail in May after serving 5 months. The no-contact order meant he had to leave the state since we lived in the same town. He moved to Florida, according to the private investigator Patricia hired to keep tabs on him. For a few months, there was blessed silence. I finished my freshman year, got straight A's, started feeling like a normal college student. Mom started dating someone, carefully, slowly, but it was progress. Then in August, the packages started arriving. Not from Christopher directly, but from various online retailers. Baby clothes, all pink, all newborn sized. The gift messages were blank, but we knew. Patricia reported it, but proving Christopher had sent them was difficult. He was using other people's accounts, paying with prepaid cards, routing everything through proxy services. He'd found a loophole. The packages escalated. Dolls that looked like me as a baby. A music box that played the lullaby from my childhood video Mom had posted years ago. A framed photo of Christopher holding a baby that wasn't me but could have been. Each gift was perfectly legal. Technically not from him, but psychologically torturous. Mom changed our address, but the packages found us anyway. I was studying in the library one September evening when a stranger approached me. Anna, she said, I'm Christina, your sister. I nearly threw up. She looked like me, but older, maybe 25. Half-sister, she clarified. Christopher is my father, too. She sat down uninvited and pulled out her phone to show me photos. Christopher with another woman. Christopher holding a toddler. Christopher at Christina's high school graduation. He raped your mother, too? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Christina shook her head. My mother was his girlfriend in high school. They dated for 2 years. He was different then, or maybe just better at hiding it. She showed me more photos. A seemingly normal teenage relationship. Mom left him when she got pregnant with me. She said he became possessive, controlling. She ran before it got worse. Why are you here? I asked, though I suspected I knew. Christina sighed. He contacted me after he got out of prison the first time. Told me about you. Said you were being kept from him illegally. He wanted me to reach out to convince you he's not a monster. She paused. But I've done my research. I know what he did. I'm here to warn you, not help him. She explained that Christopher had been building a network of supporters online, father's rights activists who saw him as a martyr. He'd been careful to present only his version of events, claiming the rape was a false accusation, that Mom had hidden me out of spite. These men were helping him circumvent the no-contact order, sending packages on his behalf, gathering information about me. One had even offered to accidentally encounter me to deliver messages. He's obsessed, Christina said. His apartment in Florida is apparently a shrine to you. Photos everywhere. Your artwork from elementary school he somehow got. Even a lock of hair he claims is yours, but probably isn't. She shuddered. I went to see him once, trying to understand who my father was. I lasted 10 minutes before I had to leave. He's not well, Anna. He's dangerous. She gave me her number before leaving. If you need anything, or if he escalates, call me. I've been watching him for years, trying to stay ahead of his chaos. After she left, I called Patricia immediately. She was glad Christina had reached out but worried about what it meant. If he's building a network, we need to be more careful. These groups can be extremist, violent even. October came with more packages, but now they were darker. Dead flowers with cards saying, thinking of you. A book about fathers and daughters with passages highlighted about forgiveness and reconciliation. A DNA test kit with a note saying, proof is in the blood. Each package was reported, but law enforcement said without proof of Christopher's direct involvement, their hands were tied. Then I started getting friend requests on social media from men I didn't know. Their profiles looked normal at first glance, but digging deeper revealed connections to fathers' rights groups. Some had shared Christopher's posts about being an alienated father. I blocked them all, made my accounts private, but they kept coming. Christina warned me that Christopher was recruiting these men to watch me, report back to him about my life. November brought an escalation I hadn't expected. A man showed up at Mom's work claiming to be from corporate, conducting routine interviews. Mom's boss nearly let him talk to her before Mom recognized something was off. The man fled before security arrived, but camera footage showed him placing something on Mom's car. It was a letter from Christopher, handwritten, saying he forgave her for her lies and hoped someday she'd let him be a grandfather to my future children. How dare he? Mom raged, the angriest I'd ever seen her. How dare he forgive me for his crime? Patricia immediately reported it as a violation of the no-contact order, but Christopher claimed ignorance. The man who delivered it refused to identify himself beyond saying he was helping a fellow father. Without cooperation, prosecution was difficult. The system that had failed to protect Mom 18 years ago was failing us again. I changed schools for my sophomore year, transferring to a college across the country where Christopher wouldn't know to look, except he already knew. On my first day, there was a bouquet of roses waiting at the registrar's office. Congratulations on your new adventure. Love always, Dad. The registrar said a nice man had dropped them off that morning, paid cash, didn't leave a name. Campus security reviewed footage, but the man wasn't Christopher, just another recruit. Dr. Harrison continued our sessions via video. He's escalating because he's losing control, she explained. The legal system has cut off his access, so he's finding illegal workarounds. This is actually when abusers are most dangerous, when they feel cornered. She helped me develop safety plans, vary my routines, stay hypervigilant without letting fear paralyze me. But she also prepared me for the possibility that this might never end. Christina called on a Thursday night in December. He's gone, she said. His apartment's empty. He told his landlord he had a family emergency. My blood went cold. Patricia immediately contacted law enforcement, but Christopher hadn't technically violated anything by moving. We hired extra security, installed new cameras, waited for him to surface. 3 days passed with nothing, then a week. The waiting was almost worse than his presence. He surfaced on my birthday, not in person, but through a billboard. Driving to campus, I saw my own face staring back at me from a massive sign. Happy 19th birthday, Anna. Love, Dad. It was visible from the highway, probably cost thousands of dollars. Cars were slowing to look. Someone posted a photo on Twitter and it went viral within hours. Creepy or sweet? The caption asked. The comments were divided. The billboard company claimed they'd been paid by a marketing firm representing a client who wanted to remain anonymous. The contract was legal, the content wasn't threatening, just deeply violating. Patricia got it removed within 48 hours, but the damage was done. My face, my name, my connection to Christopher was now public in a way we'd tried to avoid. Reporters started calling, wanting to hear about the devoted father fighting for his rights. We declined all interviews, but Christopher didn't. He appeared on a father's rights podcast, presenting himself as a victim of a corrupt system. He admitted to the assault, but claimed it was a youthful mistake he'd paid for. He cried talking about missing my childhood, about just wanting to love his daughter. The host ate it up, comparing him to fathers denied custody and divorces. The episode got millions of downloads. Mom and I watched it together, sickened by his performance. He'd learned to cry on cue, to present just enough remorse to seem human while maintaining his victimhood. Comments poured in supporting him, calling Mom vindictive, calling me brainwashed. Someone leaked our address, and protesters showed up with signs saying, "Fathers have rights too." We had to leave through the back door of our own home. Patricia filed an injunction against Christopher doing any more interviews, but the judge ruled it would violate his First Amendment rights. As long as he didn't mention specific addresses or make threats, he could tell his story however he wanted. The legal system that had briefly protected us was showing its limitations. Christopher had learned to work within those limits, to torture us legally. January brought a new horror. Deepfake videos started appearing on sketchy websites, my face superimposed on pornographic content with titles claiming I was Christopher's daughter. The sites were hosted overseas, impossible to fully remove. As soon as one got taken down, 3 more appeared. Christina traced them to forums where Christopher was active, though proving he'd commissioned them was impossible. I had to leave school. The harassment from his supporters, the pornographic videos, the constant fear made education impossible. I moved back home, defeated, which was probably what Christopher wanted. Mom quit her job to stay with me full-time. We were prisoners in our own lives while Christopher remained free to destroy us from a distance. The system had failed us completely. One night in February, I couldn't take it anymore. I called Christina and asked for Christopher's actual address. "I want to confront him," I said. "End this somehow." She refused at first, but I convinced her I just wanted to talk, to make him see what he was doing to us. She gave me an address in Georgia where he'd been staying. I told Mom I was going to stay with a friend and drove through the night. I found Christopher at a construction site where Christina said he'd been working. He saw me before I could approach, and his face lit up with pure joy. "Anna, you came to me." He started walking toward me, and I held up my hand to stop him. "Stay back," I said. "I'm here to tell you something." He stopped, but his smile didn't fade. "Anything, sweetheart? I've been waiting so long to hear your voice." "You raped my mother," I said loudly enough for his coworkers to hear. "You're not my father. You're the man who destroyed her life and has been destroying mine." His smile finally disappeared. "You don't understand," he started, but I cut him off. "I understand perfectly. You're a rapist who can't accept what you did. You're sick, and you'll never be part of my life. Stop contacting me, or I'll make your life as miserable as you've made ours." Christopher's face went through multiple emotions before settling on rage. "You're my blood," he snarled. "You can't deny that. I made you." That's when I pulled out my phone and showed him I'd been live streaming our entire interaction. Thousands of people were watching Christopher admit to making me through rape, watching his mask slip completely. "This is who you really are," I said to the camera. "This is the devoted father you've been defending." The live stream went viral before I even got back to my car. Christopher tried to follow me, but his coworkers held him back, disgusted by what they'd heard. By the time I got home, his supporters were abandoning him in droves. The father's rights groups distanced themselves. His employer fired him. The podcast deleted his episode. I'd finally found a way to fight back that the law couldn't stop. Mom was furious when I got home, then relieved, then proud. "You did what I never could," she said. "You faced him down." Patricia was less pleased about the legal implications but admitted it was effective. Christopher tried to sue for defamation, but truth is an absolute defense. He'd admitted on camera that he'd made me, that I was his blood, confirming everything we'd said about him. The packages stopped. The fake social media accounts went quiet. The pornographic videos disappeared. Christopher had lost his network, his supporters, his ability to hide behind the grieving father narrative. He was exposed as what he'd always been, a rapist refusing to accept his crime. Christina reported he'd gone completely dark. No social media, no phone, no forwarding address. For 6 months, we had peace. I went back to school, this time online, but still progressing. Mom started working again. We slowly rebuilt our lives, though we never fully relaxed. Patricia kept the security measures in place, kept the private investigator searching, but Christopher had vanished. Some thought he'd finally given up. I knew better. Predators don't give up, they just wait. He resurfaced on the anniversary of the assault. Not in person, but through a suicide note sent to every major news outlet. In it, he blamed me and Mom for destroying his life, claimed we'd driven him to his death with our cruelty. He detailed his location at a motel in Nevada. By the time police arrived, he was unconscious from an overdose. He survived, barely, and was placed on psychiatric hold. The media attention was overwhelming. Some painted him as a victim of cancel culture, a troubled man driven to desperation. Others saw through the manipulation, recognizing the suicide attempt as one final effort to control the narrative. Mom and I refused all interviews, but our silence was interpreted a dozen different ways. We were either heartless or wise, cruel or protective, depending on who was talking. Christopher recovered and was transferred to a psychiatric facility for long-term treatment. His diagnosis was updated to include borderline personality disorder, along with the narcissism. The psychiatrist said he was fixated on me as his only connection to meaning, that losing access to me had triggered a complete breakdown. They recommended indefinite hospitalization, which the court approved given his suicide attempt and history of violence. I thought that would be the end, but institutions can't hold people forever. After 18 months, Christopher was released as stabilized and no longer a threat to himself or others. The no-contact order remained, but we knew how little that meant. He moved to Maine, supposedly to start fresh, but packages started arriving again within a week. This time, they were all baby items, as if he was expecting me to have a child he could claim as a grandchild. Christina called with worse news. Christopher had been on dating sites, specifically targeting single mothers with daughters my age. He'd already moved in with one woman who had an 18-year-old daughter named Annie. "He's replacing you," Christina said, creating a surrogate family. Patricia immediately contacted authorities in Maine, but without a crime, they couldn't intervene. The woman didn't know his history. He'd used a fake name. I made the hardest decision of my life. I contacted Annie directly through social media, sent her the live stream video, the news articles, everything. Within 24 hours, Christopher was homeless again. Annie's mother kicked him out and filed a restraining order, but now he blamed me for this loss too. The emails started coming through anonymous servers. "You cost me my second chance. Annie could have been your sister. You destroy everything you touch." By my senior year of college, I'd changed my name legally. Not just my last name, but first and middle too. I became someone Christopher couldn't Google, couldn't track through public records. Mom did the same. We moved one last time, to a state we'd never been to, where no one knew our story. Patricia helped us create new identities legally, completely above board, but invisible to someone searching for Anna or Rebecca. Christopher spent the next 2 years in and out of psychiatric facilities and jail for various violations. He'd approach young women who looked like me, get arrested for harassment, serve a few months, then repeat. Christina kept me updated from a distance. She'd legally changed her name too, wanting no connection to him. We became sisters in survival rather than blood, bonded by the chaos he'd created in both our lives. On what would have been my 25th birthday, Christopher died. Heart attack in his cell while serving 6 months for violating another restraining order. Christina called me immediately. "He's gone," she said. "It's over." But I couldn't feel relief or sadness or anything, really. He'd been dead to me since the day Mom told me the truth. His physical death just made it official. Mom cried when I told her, but not from grief. All those years of fear, she said. All that energy spent watching over our shoulders. We'd shaped our entire lives around avoiding him, and now that necessity was gone. It felt like removing a cast after bones had healed wrong, painful and strange and uncertain. Who were we without the threat of Christopher defining our choices? We attended the funeral secretly, sitting in the back row as strangers. His mother was there, the grandmother I'd never met, looking broken and old. A few men from his various jobs attended. The pastor spoke about redemption and forgiveness, clearly not knowing the full story. When they opened the floor for memories, no one spoke. Christopher died as he'd lived after prison, alone, delusional, and denying his crimes to the very end. Christina met us at a diner afterward. We sat in silence for a while, processing the strange anticlimactic end to our shared nightmare. He never admitted it, she finally said. Never once took real responsibility. That was the worst part. Not the stalking or packages or even the pornography, but that he'd gone to his grave believing he was the victim. Mom had never gotten that acknowledgement, that validation of her truth. I'm 28 now, married to a wonderful woman who knows my entire story and loves me, not despite it, but with it. We have twins through IVF. No genetic connection to Christopher whatsoever. Mom is their grandmother in every way that matters, just like Richard was my father in every way that mattered. We rarely talk about Christopher anymore. He's become a footnote in our larger story of survival and love. Sometimes I dream about him still. Nightmares where he's not really dead, where he finds us despite our new names and new lives. I wake up gasping, and my wife holds me until the panic passes. Dr. Harrison, who I still see occasionally, says these dreams may never fully stop. Trauma lives in the body longer than the mind sometimes, but they're getting less frequent, less vivid. Christina and I remain close. She has a daughter now, and we joke darkly about breaking the cycle, about being the family Christopher could never create. She looks nothing like him, thankfully, all her mother's features. But sometimes she'll make a gesture or expression that's eerily familiar, and we both see it. DNA is strange that way, carrying echoes of people we'd rather forget. The legal system has changed somewhat since our ordeal. Patricia helped draft legislation in our state making it easier to terminate parental rights in cases of rape. It's called Rebecca's Law, though Mom insisted on using her maiden name rather than our new ones. She testifies sometimes, telling our story to lawmakers who need to understand why biology shouldn't automatically equal rights. I work as a victim's advocate now, helping other children of rape navigate the complex emotions and legal challenges. There are more of us than people realize, living with this specific type of origin story. Some never know their biological fathers. Others, like me, know too much. But we all carry the same weight, being proof of violence but raised in love. Every so often, someone finds our old story online and tries to connect it to who we are now. But our new names, new location, and the years that have passed make us invisible. We're just another family in another town, unremarkable and unnoticed. It's the greatest gift Christopher's death gave us, the ability to be ordinary, to be forgotten, to live without looking over our shoulders. Mom keeps one photo from before, tucked in a safety deposit box. It's her and Richard on my 5th birthday, all 3 of us covered in cake and laughing. Christopher never appears in any of our photos, never was part of our real family. Richard was my dad, Mom is my hero, and I am not Christopher's daughter. I'm the woman my mother raised me to be, strong, loved, and free. The last package arrived a week after Christopher's funeral, probably ordered before his death. It was a music box that played You Are My Sunshine. The card said, "Forever your father." I threw it in the garbage without opening it fully. Some gifts are too poisoned to keep, some connections too toxic to acknowledge. Christopher went to his grave believing I was his sunshine, but I was never his. I was always my mother's daughter, Richard's daughter, my own person. That's the truth he never understood and never accepted. Children aren't possessions. DNA doesn't create love, and rape doesn't make you a father. It makes you a rapist. Everything else, the stalking, the packages, the years of torture, was just Christopher refusing to accept that simple, unchangeable truth. He was never my father. He was just the man who raped my mother. And now, finally, he's gone. I love hearing your opinions, so drop a comment on what you would have done. And don't forget to subscribe for more.